Good morning. Happy Monday to you. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to jump right into another conversation, Talk 47. What chain breaking really looks like, what breaking chains really looks like. So, I'm going to share a story and I'll condense it down for the sake of time. But there was a young woman who was recently married and she was actually cooking a ham for dinner. She cut the ham in half and her husband asked her, "Well, why do you cut your ham in half? Why did you cut the ham in half?" And her answer was, "I don't know. I did it because my mom always did it." So she calls her mom and she's like, "Mom, why do you cut your ham in half before you cook it?" And the mom said, "Well, I did it because my mom always did it." And fortunately, the grandmother was still around, so they called grandma and they said, why do you cut the ham in half before you cook it? And grandma said, because I didn't have a pan big enough. And so that's two generations that have been doing something that they didn't understand why, just because they had seen it in the previous generation. But sometimes those generational curses are not even things that you've seen. They're passed down without being seen. So years ago, I started a journey to break some chains in the lives of myself and my children. And one of the things that I had to learn is that, not everyone's going to understand. Not everyone is going to like the fact that things are changing. Um, you know, Especially kind of family traditions are very hard for some people to let go of. And so as I was going through this journey, God spoke to me and he gave me an example of this in the Bible. And, it blew my mind. But if you look at Genesis 20 verses 21, or I'm sorry, 20 verses 1 and 2, Abraham moved south to Negev. And when he was living there, he introduced his wife Sarah as his sister. Okay. Now we get to Genesis 21. So this is in Genesis 20. In Genesis 21, Isaac is born. So he wasn't even born at the time that this happens. So Isaac is born in Genesis chapter 21. And then we fast forward to Genesis chapter 26. And Isaac moves to a different land. And in verses 6 and 7, the Bible tells us that Isaac introduced his wife Rebecca as his sister. And so, what God was showing me is that there are some things that were passed down to me that happened even before I was born. And I didn't necessarily have to see those things to actually inherit those things, but I can break those chains and I can stop that process in my life. So, when you realize that, why am I doing this? Why do I have this habit? Why do I spend the way I spend? Why do I shop the way I shop? Why do I eat the way I eat? And a lot of times it's just because it is a habit that's been passed down from generation to generation. So breaking those chains really comes from a decision of saying, okay, I am no longer going to allow this to be a part of my story. And so sometimes you can do it early enough to where it benefits your children, but sometimes when you have adult children like I do, they're going to have to break those on their own. So I hope this blessed someone today. Again, this is Genesis 20, verses 1 through 2, Genesis 21, verses 1 through 3, and Genesis 26, verses 6 and 7. God bless you.